Hello there, welcome to a Second Thoughts overview of Luthor Harkon of the Vampire Coast. I played through the initial turns as always and got a real feel for the faction. These are my conclusions, and in the end I'll draw up some army compositions for your playthroughs. As you know by now, this is not an in-depth guide, even though I cover most aspects fast and rather efficiently. So without further ado, let us play with Luthor Harkon of the Vampire Coast. So in terms of the short victory conditions, we have to restore Harkon's mind and occupy Loot Razor Sack 30 different settlements. Now, to restore Harkon's mind implies a building that you need to build in the Awakening, which is a tier 5 building. You'll see it later on. It's quite fast to achieve, so it's cool. And then we need to, we'll get a nice reward. Casual replenishment rate is one of my favorite rewards actually. It always helps and ensures a steady, long, and domination victory pursuit. Basically. Now, to achieve the long campaign victory, of course, you need to achieve the short victory, occupy Loot Razor Sack 75 different settlements, and at the start of your turn you need to have at least 25,000 infamy. Basically, you need to be the most infamous pirate to sail the oceans. Achieving this, you'll get some Winds of Magic Power Reserve, which is excellent. It does help the overall playstyle of the Vampire Coast, so it's really cool. Now notice how the beauty of these lies in how open these victory objectives are. You know, a very good sandbox experience, just like we like it. Now, in terms of the Mr. Luthor Harkon, he's the captain of the coast. He enjoys great relations with followers of Nagash, and some melee defense for lords and embedded heroes for our armies. Decent buffs there. The problem is that he also has a diplomatic penalty with the Lizardmen, so make sure that you get allies with whoever is fighting the Lizardmen, because of course you'll definitely be fighting them. Yeah, so that is about how it will. It's the only part that it's really not sandbox. You'll most likely be at war with Lizardmen, that's for certain, especially with that debuff. Now, in terms of climates, pretty suitable and good ones actually. Some unpleasant, including mountains, which is very... there's a lot of mountains everywhere. And of course the uninhabitable with the chaos. Let me show you how it feels here. So lots of green and yellow. Of course you can pretty much fight really well. Let me show you the debuffs as well. So you can pretty much conquest everywhere except you have some problems with the Chaos Wastelands, but overall a good campaign to kind of dominate the whole map if that's what you wish, you know. It's one of the average to good ones, let's say. Your starting location is a 3-settlement province. It's quite defensible. There are just a few enemies nearby, but not a lot of issues from the sea, especially not in the early game. Now, typical expansion is quite clear initially. That's kind of like to, let's take all over Lustria, but it's not mandatory. You can do whatever you wish, and especially with the pirates, with the vampire coast, you can do a lot of good, interesting playthroughs. You can go more into defending Nagash and trying to get a foothold here. You can go into against the High Elves if you wish. You know, always bear in mind that you'll most likely have Lizardmen as enemies, so be wary of that, but it's still fine. It's still fine. Just be aware of the climate, like I've stated. Okay. Yeah, and in terms of the location as well, remember you're good to go with everything that is on the sea, so beware of these goodies that you can find and definitely take advantage of those for your campaign. Now, diplomatically, pretty much anyone but Skaven and Harkon will hate you. Manfred, however, if he survives, and if Harkon the Black survives as well, given their good relations, it may prove an ally as well. So be mindful, try to find him out, see if you can support him, maybe fight just a small war against Volkmar, anything that you can to gain some favor there, and of course to try and get some good outposts later on. Now, the High Elves may eventually decide you're their biggest threat and they start sending waves of units. A defensive struggle is very possible, so be mindful of the sea. Now, your initial enemies are most likely Lizardmen and Skaven as well, if it happens. Some Bretonnians. So most of the time you'll be fighting in Lustria, that's for certain. Of course, the Dark Elves later on, that's up to it. Now, outpost potential. Most likely ogres, maybe Skaven, Tomb Kings, or Vampire Counts. Let me just show you. So if you manage to find some ogres, that's perfect. Most likely you'll just be sending some heroes due to a mechanic that I'm going to show you. So you're going to find out a lot of the factions. If you find the ogres, just try to make friends of them. And also with the Tomb Kings, with Harkon, who knows if you can get some of their excellent units, or the Vampire Counts, as I've said. Very close light, some frontline infantry, some cavalry probably. Missile units, that's what you have. That's what you're gonna have a lot of guns, friend. You're gonna have a lot of guns. So in terms of mechanics, they have a lot of rather small mechanics, but very important ones, actually. Let's start with the Pirate Coves. I just, actually, you can see here, I have a Pirate Cove in the settlement. I just placed it to showcase it to you. So you can have buildings, basically, there. So you can have some infamy gain per turn, some hero capacity, which is always excellent, and Lord recruit rank faction-wide. This is cool. Then you can have some vampiric corruption everywhere, and also infamy gained. But also the main one that is used is this. Infamy gained, and then income gained from local settlements income, 50%. You can imagine how 50% of, say, 3,000, 4,000 in some places is excellent just with one building. So it's really great. And you can even have base income here, some income from trade tariffs, and research rate. So it has a lot of options that you can do, and the best thing is that the only way to destroy the Pirate Cove, unlike for instance the Skaven Undercities, is to raise the settlement. Pirate Coves cannot be discovered, which is excellent, really truly excellent. That's one of the things that I love about the mechanic. An additional one is the Raise the Dead. So people familiar with the Vampire Counts will recognize this very easy. You can recruit units instantly, provided that that you have available units there. And basically you'll get better ones, if not mistaken, with the corruption, or as the game progresses. I'm unsure how it works, but I believe it has to do with the corruption in a certain area. But yeah, basically it's really a good idea. It's how I managed to get so many units really on turn 1. It's because I just recruited a few and went on auto-resolve just to showcase some stuff here. And it's really great. One of the best armies, the Vampire Coast, actually later on I'll mention this, but it's one of the armies that it's easier to just replenish and build up units, because they have access to almost everything. Now, speaking of another one is the treasure maps or pieces of 8. So for instance, this one, there's already one here, which is for the riddle of the map maker here. You can see that you can... Sleep is not required, for in the north there's something harsh amidst the treasure of the marsh. So basically this kinda reveals the specific location where there should be a treasure. You arrive there with this guy, for instance, chance of finding additional, let's see, and I deciphered and I got some gold and some infamy. So you can do this basically with just one hero or one lord that goes around and trying to figure out all the treasure maps, and that's a good idea. It's just a good way to keep getting some more income. Then you have Pieces of 8. Pieces of 8 are to unlock regiments of renown. You have to defeat specific lords in battle, and well, that's basically it. If you wish to unlock these, the Black Spot, Zombie Pirate Gunnery, Mob Handguns, then you'll need to defeat this guy. That's basically what it talks about. It's how it works. Now, you also need to keep in mind the infamy. Infamy is gained through actions such as killing enemy forces, raising settlements, assassinating characters, and also establishing pirate coves. And this gives you access. The more that the more that you gain, then you reach 3 specific moments, which is battles that you need to fight to obtain the sea shanty verses. And they are located here. It's basically an army ability that you'll be gaining. Notice how it's reload skill and melee defense for all units, which is great, specifically considering how the vampire counts work. And then you get the same, but plus 30, and the same plus 40. You can imagine how plus 40 metal defense, what it does to every unit in your army. It's just crazy good buff already. Now, some lords, including your Legendary Lord, have a horde style basically construction. So this is similar to Black Arcs, for instance, and it allows you to build everything that you need, honestly, and even with some specific buildings that are really important. So you can nearly build every single one that you need, and you have a few with specific bonuses for your faction overall, or for gaining infamy here, for instance, some army abilities ideas. But most of all, it's really useful for recruitment, because in essence what happens is that this faction has the best recruitment system ever, because they have global recruitment, they have the local recruitment from the province, they still have the shipbuilding recruitment, and they have the Raise of the Dead, and then they have the Regiments of Renown, and they can still have the outposts, because you can get those. So you can imagine how it's so easy with the Vampire Coast to just build up armies. Just really fast, they just build up stacks and stacks of units, if you wish, in no time. Provided, of course, you have the gold to support it. It's really cool. Now, let's speak of rights. You can see how long it takes for me to speak of all the mechanics. There's so many. Now, we have the rights, of course. The first one we have, it's all regions belonging to you will be covered in a mist to cause attrition 24/9 armies, and of course you're immune to that. You also gain some vanguard deployment for one of your units, which is great. This is basically a very defensive one, similar to the Tomb Kings one, which is really a cool idea. When you're under attack by many enemies, pop this one out, and it's really cool. Now, you also have the Curse of Eternal Service. Loyalty will not decline on turn start. Lords have 50% chance to gain 1 loyalty. Of course, every single lord has a loyalty number, and if it reaches 0, they revel, so make sure that you keep that loyalty coming. So of course, this is a good one to do that. And it adds some control to all provinces, always useful. Curse of the Queen's Cannon. This basically is for the casualty replenishment rate, plus 15%, because the Queen Bess is just 1. So you can only recruit 1 Queen Bess. But it's really great, because the Queen Bess is basically the best artillery unit in the game. It just demolishes units with 1 shot. So yeah, just get any army that has a Queen Bess. It's like if it had, an overpowered hero there, honestly. Then you have the Curse of the Bountiful Treasure. Notice that it doesn't cost anything, and it just gives you treasury plus 500 for every building owned from the Buried Treasure chain. Which one is that? Let me go and check. It's basically this, the Buried Treasure. You can see there under the plundered pile. So you can imagine that you're going to gain income with these buildings, and then as long as you're popping up that right every 15 turns, you're gaining extra money from these. So it's really helpful. Finally, last mechanic. We have the offices. So Luthor Harkon is Admiral of the Fleet and enjoys more sacking income from sacking settlements plus 15% for his army. But then you can have minus 8% for all armies faction-wide if you assign someone to Fleet Secretary. And you can have... I won't read all of the effects, but you can see how campaign movement range all armies faction-wide, less attrition, more line of sight. You can also have right cost, minus 30%, recruitment cost, all armies, income from ports, all provinces. So all of these are really great. They will still allow some specific army compositions, as you see here. For instance, whoever becomes the Fleet Beastmaster will be enjoying some more weapon strength for deck droppers, terror guys, scurvy dogs. So of course, you may wish to have an army following that, So yeah, it's really a great idea to have some fleet offices around here. Let me show you the last ones, of course. Always note what are the faction-wide and what are the Lord army effects before you assign it, okay? And notice that it requires some rank and loyalty, so be wary of that, okay? Now, basically that's it. As you can see, a lot of small mechanics in some cases, but very useful and very cool and very representative of what it feels to be, let's say, a pirate. I really love the mechanics in this faction overall. In terms of province edicts, they have some atypical effects. So they have loyalty that won't decline for the armies in province. Infamy lost at the cost of more control and of course of the loyalty. Then you also have minus attrition when under siege, global recruitment capacity +1, faction-wide of course, and more ammunition for armies in province. It may seem small, but ammunition for the Vampire Coast really is important. I'll explain why. Every single unit has this extra powder ability, which is when ammunition is above 80%. So ammunition really plays a role in their army, basically in their army capabilities. So, continuing with the province edicts. Then we have the campaign movement range minus for any enemy armies, and of course it's a vampiric corruption one. And we also have a great one. Plus growth minus recruitment cost for any zombie units and local recruitment capacity +1. So notice that there's nothing for income, for instance, or something like that. Or for research, which I would love for the Vampire Coast. But for the most part, growth will be probably your main one. And then you have some global recruitment capacity that you may have in certain specific places, especially when you need to recruit a new army, you know. And let's proceed with the army stances. So you have the dig for treasure. This combines, of course, with the mechanic for digging for treasure, for the buried treasure. And you also have the encamp, which does not cost any movement points. You should do this at every opportunity to replenish, to gain access to the global recruitment, to be immune to attrition. You also have raiding for 50%, this is the basic. You also have ambush, the typical one as well, and then forced march. But notice how in camp it's really useful, particularly for them. It's one of the factions that fights with Norska in terms of which one is better to replenish their troops, because Vampire Coast are just crazy good. I think it's actually one of the best army in terms of that regard. So in terms of buildings, the Awakening has the Ancient Vault. Now, this is the one capable of restoring Harkon's mind and with some nice faction-wide buffs, but note that the previous one is a minus. It's only penalties for you. So the best idea is to just build this up. And then at least it will take 12 turns, so you only build it when you reach level 5 with your settlement, you know, tier 5. Then you build this, and then 12 turns you build that one, just to ensure that you don't have, don't suffer too much from this landmark, of course. Now, in terms of military, you require 6 building. The biggest issue is that all of them must be built on the capital. Of course, as you can see there, all of them must be built on the capital. Well, you can build until tier 3 in other settlements, but it's not really that useful. Even though you have good units in there. So you have great firing capacity because you have the zombie part gunnery mobs, the handgun ones, the bomber ones were crazy good. Then you have some deck droppers if you wish. You have some carronades and mortars, and you also have most of your monstrous infantry, so the Morghuls, the Sirens, and the Rotting Prometheans. So you have some capacity, but it is tier 4 and 5 units that really make the best of this army, with the deck gunners, with the Death Shriek Terrorgeists, the Depth Guard, who are crazy good, and the Rotting Prometheans gunnery mob, which is excellent. Now, it is probably one of the few factions that only needs one building. They only need this building to be somewhat effective into the late game. It gives you a good hero, gives you good front line with the Rotting Prometheus. They're a defender, they can hold on the line. Then you have all the necessary mob clearing ones, anti-large, armor piercing missile units. So yeah, you literally only need this building if you wish, just to build up some interesting armies to to fight, to win. Now, infrastructure. Let's talk about it. We have a control growth in enemy hero action success, which is reduced, and also minus for leadership. It's cool. We have an income and control building. Not a lot of income, but still decent. We have vampiric corruption, not only in your province but on adjacent provinces. So of course, maybe all you need is one every province, and so, or one that has a lot of neighbors, basically. And then we have the income building. Overall, remember that always this income, you must consider that it's always better, because you have that right, as long as you keep doing the right to get even more from these buildings, well, then you'll never run out of income. Now, research is amazing and useful. It gives great buffs for your troops. They'll become really powerful, really cool. And it also allows you some good campaign stuff, such as more corruption, less raise the debt cost. It allows you to have some banners, some like this master gunner, like ancillaries. That's the word that I'm searching. And you also even have these admirals. Sorry, I led astrolabs and then I mixed admirals. So these legendary ones, they do cost infamy. Notice that. But these ones have the ship building ability, so you'll have at least, even if you don't manage, even if you don't build on everyone, you'll be able to have 5, including a Legendary Lord, of course, which have access to the ship building mechanic, which is great. You'll have 5 places where you can recruit, or 5 armies that you can recruit on the spot. As always, we have our Legendary Lord or Lord specifics. Then we have the yellow line or combat ones. Of course, you also have the caster, if it happens to be a caster, of course. Then we have the red line or army. And then you have the blue line or campaign one. Now, the blue line has a very interesting aspect. Of course, it has casualty replenishment rate, which allows a lot. But then you have, where is it? Then we have the upkeep. Notice the value. I don't know if it is overlooked, but it's still 15%, as it was in Warhammer 2, which means that you can actually get, with the 8%, you can get much reduced upkeep compared to any other armies. Talk about getting even more armies. Now, it requires a lot of skill points overall. So basically, because everyone is kind of like a spellcaster, really, everyone will have some spells. So yeah, it's difficult. But you should plan wisely, of course. But still, it's really cool. In terms of the red line, it can be extremely effective or not. It's a very good one, you'll see later on, to come up with different possibilities for your armies. But for instance, even reanimated marksmen already give for, a unit that can hold the line, the Rotting Promethean's Gunnery Mob. So yeah, consider that as well. Now, gunnery rights are actually invaluable because they give more ammunition, which reacts with the powder ability that I showed you. And you also have the caster heroes, the Vampire Fleet Captains, which provide replenishment. Once more replenishment, as if you need it. Of course, you have the Morgul Hunter for scavenge and spread corruption. So yeah, you have good options in terms of your heroes, and all of them are tier 3 to recruit. So that's also a good notion to have. So here are the red line skills for the Vampire Coast. Note how both low tier infantry and high tier are on the same one, and how nearly every ranged unit will include a frontline defender is on another. So basically it means that even with just 2, you will be able to have a lot of good combinations that will fight effectively. Now then they enjoy some of the cheapest combinations, really, which is excellent because all lords already have casting abilities and you should have some choices for other skills. Now let's go for Luthor Harkon. So he gives spell resistance to every, to all the Lord army, to his Lord's army. So you also have some leadership from Zombie Pirate Deckhand's Mob and Depth cards. Not really that much, but of course helps. But then you enjoy some missile strength for Zombie Pirate Gunnery Mobs and Rotting Promethean Gunnery Mobs for the Lord's army. So of course you can build up an army just with that. But still, I like to have some depth guards, you know, some mixed in with some rotting in the Prometheans, gunnery mobs in the middle of the line, and then a good line of cannons and some missile troops. If you decide not to have some cannons and mortars, of course, you can have just a standard line of lots of guns, which is always useful. You can see that, for instance, here you may see, oh, it's only a doom stack with full of missile troops. No, really, these 4 are your infantry, and then you can even have Luthor there. So that's already 5 units to soak up. And of course, all of these, it's about taking care of them before they reach you. Notice how cheap, in terms of red line skills, they are. Now, we can also enjoy just some front line with some monsters and have some missiles. Then you can have maybe some sirens and some flying units and more into the monsters. Notice how there's nothing that is infantry based here, but still cheap. And this one is probably with what I would consider, both this one and this one are what I consider the standard one, so that will do. Notice though how they benefit a lot from different unit types. You know, this one has like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and still they only cost 14. That's what I meant when they are very cheap in terms of the red line skills, really. This helps so much. It helps so much the Vampire Coast into being really powerful. These are 2 additional ones. This is a typical, let's say, Doom stack where everyone shoots. Everyone here has some way of shooting something, and this is the opposite. Basically, just some flyers for missiles. And most of these units are really fast, so it also helps. Maybe you will want this as a sweeper army, just to have some fun. Notice how the advantage, once more, red line skills, they're really cheap to make. So I would honestly just try out some good compositions with this, and maybe with outposts, just have fun. To resume, it's a complete change from the typical undead faction, and one that enjoys, because they are ranged of course, focused, and enjoys exploring the map and just being a pirate. You have a lot of flexibility with the victory objectives, which means that you can just explore the map, get treasure, build pirate coves, and develop while slowly expanding. Or you can just expand really fast, benefiting from your fast replenishment, benefiting from the fact that you can recruit lots of units. It's up to you. Their army is crazy good after all the buffs you can get, and the sea shanties actually make you a formidable force on the battlefield, nearly second to none. Beware though, you rely on range, so if you're moving while you're already on range, stop and fire. I cannot stress this out enough. Your army consists of good infantry, great missiles and artillery, some of the best in the game, good monstrous infantry, decent flyers, good single entities. They lack cavalry, and they're somewhat slow overall. I'd like to add the final one to this, which is this: please stop and fire. You benefit greatly from having them already in range. Ensure that you start shooting them as soon as possible. Replenishment is great, especially with good climate. Be wary of the chaos locations, but even there, they're one of the easiest factions to replenish. You have access to so many ways to replenish or to build up more units, so don't worry in that regard. Definitely, you will always have 2020 armies if you have the income for it. Now, I believe now it is time to go and pillage the whole world with Luthor Harkon.